Welcome to episode 332 of the DFO Rundown, brought to you by Fountain Tire. They specialize in tire and auto service, and they'll not only give you great customer service, but they'll also give you a fantastic deal. They'll treat your vehicle like it's your vehicle. If you need new tires or maybe your engine has a little rattle, stop in at Fountain Tire and they'll help sort you out. Right now, you can save up to $225 on a set of 4 select tires, including Goodyear, but only until December 14th. Stop in at Fountain Tire and make an appointment. Check out fountaintire.com. I'm Jason Gregor. Welcome in Frank Saravalli. As man, there is lots going on in this early NHL season. Every day it seems like there's another big story. And I guess let's start, sadly, it gets that time of year, injuries. And my goodness, the training staff of the Colorado Avalanche are working overtime, Frank, due to a variety of reasons. Landeskog, Nichuskin, Lehkonen. Now you're throwing Ross Colton, who is on fire for them early on this season with 8 goals. He's out 6 to 8 weeks. Miles Wood is out. And it keeps piling on in Colorado. Like they don't even have enough forwards. The coach asked Shillington if he'd play forward, and he was like, "Oh yeah." So it's not going great injury-wise in Colorado, just as they kind of started to look like they were coming out of their funk.
Yeah, and look, injuries certainly are one thing, but they didn't have the depth going into this season that they've had in past years, and it's more or less completely eroded by now.
Yeah. And Drouin, I forgot I mentioned him. Drouin is also hurt.
Yeah, and Devon Taves missed time already this season too, but he's back. So look, if you take a look at the Colorado Avalanche and the top 6 that they played on Wednesday night as they got thumped by the Tampa Bay Lightning, it's not anywhere close to playoff caliber. It's Yoel Kiviranta playing with Nathan MacKinnon and Mikko Rantanen. Okay, that's a great line. Kiviranta would get shuffled down. Second line, though, Ivan, Casey Middlestat, Logan O'Connor. It gets worse from there, not better. Shillington playing forward with Parker Kelly and Nikolai Kovalenko. Fourth line, Chris Wagner, TJ Tynan, and Matthew Steinberg. I mean, you'd have to be the most hardcore of hardcore hockey fans to know who some of those guys are in the bottom 6, let alone be confident in what you're seeing in the top 6 outside of MacKinnon and Rantanen, that it's not getting better anytime soon for the Avs. And right now, I'm convinced, like literally at this exact moment, their season is spiraling. If they don't get reinforcements, which they can't really trade for from the cap reasons we've talked about all fall, I don't know how they stay in the race.
Well, their big 3 are going to have to be really the only option, right? Them and
I mean, how much more can they possibly do?
Yeah,
have you seen their numbers? I mean, they're outrageous.
Yeah, no, they're great. And they played almost 25 minutes a night last night, MacKinnon and Rantanen, and you throw in Makar. And so, yeah, that's like Makar's leading the league in scoring. MacKinnon's got 18 points. So, yeah.
And Rantanen has 15 and 11, 15, 18, and 19. I mean, Middlestat's been really good. He's also north of a point per game, but these guys, 19 points in 11 games is just about as good as you can do.
Yeah. And, what are they? I guess 5th in the and their points percentages, right? So yeah, it's going to be hard, man. There's no question. Like you said, like cap wise, although do they just bite the bullet? Do they move some guys to LTIR?
Well, that doesn't solve the problem because you can move guys to LTIR, but what about none of these are season-ending injuries? Yeah, so if you move them to LTIR and you trade for someone, what are you going to do when you go to activate these guys?
Well, you know what? I worry about that issue then, because like you said, if you
can't give up assets to do that, that's crazy.
Well, you move guys to the minors or what have you, right? Like right now, they just got to add $2 million, just get guys on the roster. They can always send them down to the minors. It's like Edmonton.
What are you giving up to get those guys? Everyone knows you're in hell.
Yeah.
No one's helping you out.
Yeah, there's a few guys on waivers that could have claimed, and maybe they wait for a waiver claim now. Like I know, hey, people will look, but we can go through the list. There are actually quite a few players that have gone on waivers and then helped the team that claimed them, right? And so, but yeah, it's not ideal.
Waiver time's over. It's October 31st. You might get one guy a week.
Yeah, wow.
It's that
One guy's
ship
better.
has sailed.
Nothing. Yeah, I don't know what they do, man, but that's their only option, unless they're going to recall some young guys and hope to God they got some young guys in the minors that can help them. But they don't really have a lot of that either.
They've maxed them out. I mean, that's pretty much it.
Well, Joe Sakic, I guess they got his, him in the organization there. They're going to have their work cut out for him, I guess. This is when you get paid the big bucks. See how it works.
Well, they were already going into this year with a really thin group compared to previous years.
Oh God, the Drouin, Lehkonen, and Ross Colton. Those are all, let's say, those are all top 6 guys on their team. They're projected to be top 6, and Miles Wood's a third liner. So that's 4 out of 9 guys gone. I'm not even including Nichuskin because we all knew he wasn't ready to start the season. So, yeah, that's brutal.
I'm wondering if you injected some truth serum into Chris McFarland, would he say that they regret sending Cal Ritchie back to Oshawa? Because unfortunately, once he's there, you can't bring him back. And to me, he was ready to play in the NHL. I think he has if you watched him last year in the OHL, he has absolutely 0 to gain by playing in the AHL. 80 points in 50 games last year. Did it all. Smartest player in the league, bar none. And a strong two-way player at that with his hockey IQ. I'm not saying he'd be a savior, but it's one more piece that you'd have for now and the future that you could keep all year.
You and I will disagree about nothing to gain. Did he penalty kill? How's his two-way? Like, he scored 28 goals, which is great, but you know what? If you want to be more of a goal scorer in the NHL, you usually, historically, you got to be a 40-goal guy in junior. So I still think it's only his 19-year-old year. Keeping him, would he be a better option than some of the guys you have? Would it be a difference-making option? I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
I mean, that part is fair to whether it be a difference maker or not, but
yeah. And then you kind of you worry his development gets stunted. Guys, they get their teeth kicked. They don't score. They lose their confidence. And yeah, short term it might, but I think the long-term ramifications would have been worse. So I bet you he would say, no, I don't regret it. Like, I regret all our guys getting hurt, and maybe I regret some other guys on waivers when I could have, but hey, hindsight 2020, they didn't probably expect guys to go down. Like it's crazy to have that many key injuries, Frank. And what do they play? 10 games? Like, it's 12% of the season. It's like you're getting a guy hurt every second game.
Yeah. And the Colton one, like, there's nothing you can do.
No,
it's crazy.
Yeah. And then obviously the other injury that this week, Connor McDavid is out 2 to 3 weeks. I will have to say, I find it interesting. Like, if this was the Oilers lineup to start a regular season, and you looked at their top 6 that has a Hart Trophy winner, who has the second leading scorer in the NHL over the last 5 years, you've got a guy, even if you think Zach Hyman's 50 goals is unrepeatable, fine. But he still has 90 goals the last 2 years, right? You look at him the last 3 seasons, he's legit 30-goal man. Jeff Skinner has scored 30 goals 6 times. Adam Henrique has scored 20 goals 8 times. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has 4 60-plus point seasons. They have enough talent on that team that this team shouldn't just waver. Like, if you go down a lot of other NHL rosters, they'd be like, man, I wish we had this much talent in our top 6. I get that McDavid leaves a big hole, but I think to suggest the Oilers shouldn't be able to compete, I put the onus on the players. They've got enough skill to get through 2 to 3 weeks without Connor McDavid. And if they just tank, to me, that is a failure on the part of the players. They've got more than enough competent NHLers that they should be able to handle 2 to 3 weeks without McDavid.
I mean, you won't get an argument from me on that. It's, to me, the most concerning part of the Oilers season to this point was Monday night, the way they reacted to his injury. Wasn't concerned about the lack of scoring, the numbers, the chances, not entirely concerned about the goaltending. I think they've defended just fine. But to sit back after the best player in the world gets hurt, that can't be the answer. And so maybe there was a part that they were stunned. Maybe there was I don't know, something with the back-to-backs. I don't know what it is, but it's going to be a really interesting, we're going to learn a lot about the Oilers over these next 2 weeks.
Yeah, maybe third game in 4 nights, second half of back-to-back, maybe.
It's not an excuse in the NHL.
Yeah.
It just isn't. And not against a team that doesn't hold a candle to you in talent.
No, and we've seen a lot of blowouts early on this year. St. Louis just got crushed 8-1. Montreal loses 8-2. There's lots of 6-1 losses. So
Vancouver just had their biggest shutout loss in like 6 years last night in the Hughes Bowl.
Yeah. And then look at there's the Canucks game. What about, Vegas? That game was 6-1, and then Vegas scored some 2 late goals to make it look closer. And so it's early on, man. It's been blowout season, but you're right. The Oilers, to me, there's a few things. They've been in a funk. I went back and looked at the last 10 Stanley Cup losing teams. Their average record to the first 10 games was 5-4-1. Not very good. It's not a pace to even be a playoff pace over the course of, projects to be 90 points, right? Doesn't get you in the playoffs. So that's lots of good teams. Now, most of them recover. Montreal was the one exception, and they were the exception because they were that outlier in the 21 season, Frank. They weren't that good. They got on a hot streak, went to the Cup final, and then were terrible the next year, finished 32nd. And we've seen that actually a few times from other teams. But the other ones all became competitive teams, 100 points, 97 plus points. So I still think the Oilers are good. They haven't played up to their capabilities, but now, to me, last year they got the shock of her coach firing. It woke them up. Now there's McDavid's not here. We got to wake up. Their power play's got to be infinitely better. Their penalty kill's a disaster. Their 5-on-5 play is actually good. They can't score in the ocean. That's their issue. And so to me, we'll see, as you said, what this group is made of. You look in the mirror, and here's an opportunity for a lot of guys, to give it the proverbial FU to everybody who thinks they're only a one-man team. Here's their chance to show they aren't.
Do you have a question, though? Watching McDavid through the first 10 games, and I guess it's really 9 because he played 37 seconds in game 10. Did he look right to you?
Well, if you look, all you got to do is go to the NHL Edge speed, and it shows you that no, he wasn't at his explosive self that you normally see. I think it's fair.
Well, so is there any chance, like obviously the crash into the boards is different, but is there any chance that there's something else going on?
I know.
I don't want to pin it on that. I'm just saying he didn't look the same to me as he has in past years.
When he's not explosive, the eye test, and then you can see the actual data. That NHL Edge is pretty cool for that. You can break it down. It shows you the high speed. And last year there's McDavid and MacKinnon's kind of in his own territory in a lot of it, but there's MacKinnon and McDavid, and then lots of everybody else when it comes to explosive speed consistently. And McDavid isn't there this year. Now he's not slow, but by his standards, he's slower. And the Oilers have had the puck more. They've outshot the opposition a lot. So it can't be, they're always defending. So yeah, is there a hangover? Is there fatigue? Is there nursing something? I don't know. I've never seen him miss a practice. So I don't know, but here he'll get some rest now, right? 2 to 3 weeks. They're not going to rush him back. There's no reason to rush him back. You've got
he's
such a
fast healer, and he's so hungry that with the team that he has around him, I'd be real surprised if it ends up being 3 as opposed to 2 weeks.
Yeah, I broke it down the schedule. It's 6 to 11 games, 11 being the max at 3 weeks, that 6 being 2 weeks. So somewhere in the middle. I think Toronto would be game 9, Frank. So they're in Toronto, and so maybe he wants to return home there. There's also, I think, a 2-day break before that game. So we'll see. Either way, they got to play better. But anybody in Edmonton who wants to use injuries as an excuse, I'm just look at the Avs. Stop with we got one player hurt, so now we're terrible. It's a joke, and it's a built-in excuse, and it should not be used.
Agree.
Now, a few other teams to look at. Let's go to the positive side, Frank. It was, I had Don Waddell on my show earlier this week, and he just talked about how challenging it's been, of course. He's been around the NHL for a long time. Obviously, he's never experienced anything like this with losing Johnny Gaudreau and in the fashion that he passed away, just very avoidable. Don't drink and drive, people. But you look at Columbus, and, they're a high-flying offensive team right now, Frank. Top 5 in goals in the National Hockey League. Merzlikins pitches a shutout. and they're off to a really good start considering the loss of Johnny Gaudreau.
Where'd it come from? Like I just, who saw this happening? Certainly not me. A few things to keep in mind. I think one, can't overstate the impact of Dean Evison.
Yes.
That part has been huge. Guys love playing for him, and he brings a ton of structure and intensity. Two, I would say the moves that Don Waddell made to get rid of players who didn't want to be there.
Yep.
Hey, we're going to enter this season with guys that want to be Columbus Blue Jackets. Look at how that's helped Calgary. Well, they've come back down to earth, but the change in dynamic in that dressing room is different. And, I think the other part is because of opportunity and coaching staff and viewpoint and fresh start, you see those young guys that Columbus has start to take steps forward. So that part is also hugely important. And I think the exciting part is they're really just like, you're just starting to use David Jiricek. You're just starting to give more ice time to these guys and more opportunity, that it should continue to be on the upswing. Not to say that team isn't gonna, when the season really gets going in late November at Thanksgiving, and teams, look, we just talked about the blowouts, teams start playing for keeps. Not saying that Columbus isn't going to run into rough patches of ice. Not saying that at all. But theoretically, the development path should continue to be positive for all the young guys that they have.
Well, they have a lot of guys feeling good about themselves. You look at their shooting percentage, people will tell you, oh, it's unsustainable. And of course, you're not going to have a 14% shooting percentage at 5-on-5, right? Last year, there were 2 teams over 10. So just theoretically, but Marchenko's playing really well. Sean Monahan, Frank, you can tell there's a guy, I think it's highly motivated. He came to Columbus to play with one of his best friends, and that's not there. And, he's made a choice. Hey, I'm going to be a leader. He's looked great. Zach Werenski is healthy and playing outstanding for them early on. What about Matthew Olivier? Like, the Fighters got 4 Genos and 6 points in 9 games, man. Are you kidding me? Like, that guy's becoming a massive fan favorite in Columbus. And, they got some other young guys. I really like, I don't know how many Columbus games you've watched, but Adam Fantilli, Frank, that guy's going to be a player. Not a shocking thing to say. It's not like, oh my God, there's a hot take, but he looks just bigger and stronger. It's too bad Kent Johnson is out with the shoulder injury. That hurts because he was off to a good start. So,
but it kind of is not to say it's a hot take, but like, look at the way last year went.
Well, for that, yeah, last year was a disaster. But Don Waddell, he's an old school, and the great part of Don that I love is his honesty. Because when you said, well, who saw this coming? I asked Don about their offense, and Don's like, to say I'm surprised would be putting it mildly. He was so honest about, he didn't think his team was going to have this many guys scoring. And so, are they going to keep it up? Who knows? But confidence is a strange beast, and it can carry you for a long time, just like a lack of confidence can dig you a deeper hole that's hard to get out of. And so I think that Columbus is a team that's going to be emotionally connected, maybe more, right? Like, every time they come in that dressing room, Johnny Gaudreau's jersey's up. I think that's a pretty powerful motivator. There's no reason to feel sorry for yourself ever in that room. You look and say, hey man, we're here, we're having fun. Let's honor him in the best way possible. And I really think there's some power in that.
Yeah, I agree. Totally. And in the face of just unimaginable tragedy, it's the best story in the league.
Oh yeah, 100%. Other guys off to great starts, Frank. Kyle Connor, he's been one of the best goal scorers, consistent. Like, the guy would score 30 goals every year. The only year he didn't was the shortened 21 season, and he still had 26 and 56, which easily prorates to 30 plus. This guy is having a great start to the season, and it's an easy take, but I think he's going to reach 50 for the first time as long as he stays healthy. And the Jets are rolling. They had the one hiccup against Toronto and still made a game of it when he scored 4 points. But God, they look really good. And Kyle Connor and Scheifele are on fire.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to think of the Jets and think about their structure and think about their commitment to defend and how few goals they give up. And Hellebuck has been ridiculous again. Both goalies have been really good. Eric Comrie, he's got 2 starts, 2 wins, 9-15. But it cuts short or sells short how well they've scored. And their power play has been really one of the pleasant surprises in the league, because they struggled big time last year on the power play. And they didn't make a ton of changes to personnel. New full-time head coach and Scott Harneal, but players on the ice are mostly the same. And to see such a big delta in power play year over year is hugely impressive. And you can't help but love watching Kyle Connor. When I see him at his best, how quickly the puck is on and off his stick is insane. Like, you're talking fractions of seconds before it's top shelf, before it's 5-hole, before it's under blocker side. It's that fast.
No.
Well, and confident, insanely confident.
He can shoot, and he is at not only quick release, Frank. Watch how many of his goals are insanely accurate to the small 6-inch, 4-inch, 2-inch area that's open, and he hits it consistently. That's why, to me, he's a sharpshooter. There's not a lot of guys, there's guys who score goals in different ways. He is one, I think, the quietest snipers the NHL has. Like, a guy who's a consistent, he doesn't score a lot of goals, hammering rebounds. Of course, he scores some, but man, he can consistently beat goalies from distance, and that's hard to do in today's game.
Aim small, miss small.
It's true. And the other offensive guy, we haven't talked about him much. We haven't really talked about their team on the pod. It's probably a big oversight on our part, but all he does is get 2-point games right now. Kirill Kaprizov is riding a 6-game multi-point streak. He has 7 of his 9 games this year. He scored at least 2 points. The only games he didn't, against the Jets, he had 0 points and then 1 point against Columbus. His other 7 games, he's had 3 points 3 times, 2 points in the other games, but 6 consecutive games to get multi-point games. Pittsburgh, Philly, Tampa Bay, Florida, Columbus, St. Louis. This guy, and we've seen Kaprizov before. He had a little bit of a slow start last year, Frank, but I'm telling you, maybe as just pure offensively talented players, Kaprizov's definitely top 5 and might be top. He's. I think if I had to just say purely offensive talented, I have McDavid. I put Draisaitl, MacKinnon, Kucherov, and I think Kaprizov would be my 5th.
It's pretty high praise.
Oh, buddy, watch this guy. What
I like most about him is that he doesn't sit back and wait for it to come to him. He goes and works for it.
Yeah. He's dynamic. I know people are like, what about Matthews? Yeah, he's a great shooter. Don't get me wrong, but watch Kaprizov and just all the area of his game. He's dynamic, right? Matthews is the best shooter in the game. It's no question, but Kaprizov's overall offensive plays that he makes with the puck shooting and passing, he just is a fun guy to watch. And that's, the NHL needs more of those guys. And he doesn't do just the little fancy plays that aren't successful. He, not that I have anything against the Michigan, but you know what I mean? Sometimes there's a lot of individual plays that don't work that look okay. That's not Kaprizov.
You're all over Matvei Michkov there.
No. Oh no, I wasn't even thinking of Michkov. It's a few other guys, but I don't mind it every now and then, but that's right. Kaprizov does plays that produce points, and that's what I like.
So let me ask you this, and it's not to be critical of the Wild. I'm genuinely curious. If Kaprizov isn't going, do they have enough? So just let me read you this, okay? Yeah. I'm just looking at his breakdown this season. He's got 5 goals and 13 assists for 18 points in 9 games.
Yep.
Of those 13 assists, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them are primary assists, meaning he's really driving play.
Yep.
Do they have enough outside of him?
Well, I think
Goldie has been good.
Yeah. I just look at, okay, so right now they've got 10 players through 9 games who have 2 goals. So if you prorate that, that's that's 9 guys scoring. That's 10 guys scoring 16 goals. That's lots. I think that's more than enough.
Okay.
Zuccarello's got 5 goals. Boldy and Eriksson Ek have 4. They don't get a ton from their back end. Like Jake Middleton, I don't know what the hell's going on with Jake Middleton. We should probably talk about him more. He's got 7 points in 9 games, for God's sakes. That's probably not going to continue. But I think they have enough that when you have an elite guy, it takes the pressure off all the other ones. But Matt Boldy's a 30-goal scorer for sure. It might be a 40-goal scorer, right? So, and you're going to have a few other guys. Zuccarello is definitely going to score 20 for you. Eriksson Ek's a 20-goal scorer. I think Marco Rossi can be a 20-goal man. I love what Marcus Foligno brings to your team. Ryan Hartman's another highly competitive player, right? Then you throw on their back end, like again, right? Spurgeon's, what does he miss? 6 out of the 9 games. And, Brock Faber's playing a ton again. So I do think they have enough depth scoring. Now, Kaprizov, I don't think he's going to be a 160-point player. Obviously not. But so it will come down a bit, but scoring in general across the league is going to come down. It always starts out a little bit higher, and then Kaprizov's points will go down, there's other guys around the league. Mark Stone's not scoring at that pace all year long, etc. So I do think they have enough to be a competitive team, Frank, all season long.
Okay, maybe a dumb question here, but Saturday will mark 1 month until rosters are due for 4 Nations face-off.
Yep.
Bill Guerin is the GM of Team USA. Do Matt Boldy and Brock Faber both make the team?
Ooh, I'm trying, and I think Faber might be in tougher, right? When I look at their back end, but hey,
I think they're both right on the edge.
Yeah. But if Matt Boldy's, on pace for 35, 40 goals at that time, I think he's going to have a really good chance, right? Like the U.S. has a lot of forwards, Frank. They don't have a ton, like Matthews is big, but they don't have a ton of like big forwards, right? And, Tage Thompson obviously is a center. He's pretty huge, but like Clayton Kellers, Casey Middlestads, Cole Caulfield's, right? So they have a lot of those guys. So yeah, I think I put Boldy in the category. He's probably going to compete with now different positions, center to a winger, but Dylan Larkin, Alex DeBrincat. Now Brady Tkachuk, I think, is on the team for sure. The 2 Tkachuk brothers, because Brady brings you some elements, but I think Matt Boldy, because his size and scoring, I know Bill Guerin, I think he's going to have a really good chance. All right. Like if he's healthy, I would have him on my team. I think I know when I did it in the summertime, I had him on as my 12 forwards, and his start has done nothing to change that for me. If I look on the blue line, like obviously Adam Fox,
so Fox and McAvoy were already picked to the team as right shot D.
And Quinn Hughes
is the left shot D. So that's 3 of your 7 defensemen.
Yeah. Then there's
so I've got Jacob Slavin.
Right.
I think he's a lock as a left shot guy.
Right.
So Hughes and Slavin on the left side are your locks. McAvoy, Fox are, I think, well, they're already picked. They're the locks on the right.
Yeah.
So that leaves essentially what it comes down to for me. Are you going John Carlson or Brock Faber?
What about Seth Jones?
I don't think Seth Jones, I mean, watching him play really closely, I don't think he's at that level.
Okay.
So your other options are Jacob Trouba on the right side, Brandon Carlo on the right side.
Well, one guy's having an unreal year.
I have Neil Pionk as my 7th D.
Dude, I was just going to say Neil Pionk in Winnipeg is highly competitive, right? He's having an unreal offensive season. I think he's got 12 points already. And another guy you mentioned on the pod a while back, Frank, who's really having a breakout year, Michael Kesselring.
Yeah, but
probably not going to get it.
He's not even close to this category.
Yeah.
So but here's the real, it's not the real question, but there's 2 factors when it comes to both Boldy and Faber. Not only are they your own players, which ask Steve Yzerman how that went with Marty St. Louis, but you're also not just thinking of four nations in a vacuum, because a year later, you're also picking a team for the Olympics.
Yeah.
So if you pick John Carlson this year, which I don't think is the wrong play, he's been really good. Do you pick John Carlson also in 2026, or is there a possibility that Faber just completely passes him by then?
Yeah, well, and because the Olympics there, it might be, you're Bill Guerin, you have a very honest conversation with Brock Faber and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, like you'll be in the mix heavily for the Olympics. It's only 1 year away. He is so young. Like Marty St. Louis, I think is a very different example, right? Like guy had won a Hart Trophy, right? Multiple cups when he didn't get picked. So a little bit different scenario, I think. And experience does matter, but Faber's a hell of a player. They've got a lot of smaller D-men, Frank, like, Quinn Hughes, Adam Fox. So when you compile the team.
Did you say Adam Fox is small?
He's 6 feet, not that big.
Okay. I don't think of him as small.
Yeah, but he's not like you look at the NHL D-men of cup winning teams, right? Like, and now Fox is elite, so there's exception. But I think if you have too many of those guys, right? I think it's not ideal in how they construct
McAvoy's 6'2", like, yeah.
McAvoy's bigger, right? 6'2" is fine, but that's why I do wonder that Seth Jones' size might help him. I agree with you.
I don't think Seth Jones is in the mix. I really don't.
Okay.
So I think you could probably cross him off.
Okay. So
really what it comes down to is, so it's essentially the way I view it. I have Pionk on as the seventh guy. It's either Carlson or Faber. And then
they need some penalty killers, right? And Faber does penalty kill. That's the advantage he'll have.
Yeah.
Right.
Then left side, do you go Hannafin, Brady Shea, Keandre Miller, or Jake Sanderson?
Oh, God, man, I like Jake Sanderson a lot. But
again, this goes back to four nations and Olympics. Like I think what
what about the one guy you didn't even mention? What about Thomas Harley? Buddy, Thomas Harley's a hell of.
No.
You don't think Thomas Harley's good? What?
No, it's not that I don't think he's good. I just don't think he's at the level of these other guys.
Ooh, man, I don't know. Thomas Harley was unreal in the playoffs for Dallas. I like him a lot. So big and mobile. He's an unbelievable skater. So, yeah, the left side probably depth-wise might be better.
The left side depth-wise, well, yeah, I mean, duh. It's left shot versus right shot.
Well, no, they're right guys. They got some good right guys, but I just overall, like when we get to I think the pool, when you said it's Carlson and Faber, Pionk, I just think, the competition, there's 5 or 6 guys compared to maybe only 3.
I'm just thinking holistically, do you want to get as much of your 2026 team assembled now? And if there's something to be said for Brock Faber and Jake Sanderson to be playing in high pressure Team USA games that don't really count as much as the Olympics a year ahead of time.
Yeah. It's funny though, when you haven't had best on best, and I know but still, it's still going to be USA, Canada, Finland, Sweden. So it is best on best.
It's going to be USA, Canada on Saturday night, February 15th, 8:00 at Bell Center in Montreal. It is going to be electric.
So when you look at this and in your team, you can think about the Olympics, but I think you want to win this one just as much. It's the first one
I think if anything, I'm not saying you don't try and win, obviously, but I think the main goal here is the Olympics. You want to win gold. You're not. This is cool. No one is ever going to talk about this again after this happens. Just like no one has ever talked about the World Cup of Hockey after it happened. Because it is best on best Canada US, but we don't have a Kirill Kaprizov in this tournament. We don't have Leon Draisaitl in this tournament. No. So it's not to say it doesn't mean anything. It's purely bragging rights. It's purely pride. The Olympics are where it counts. That is the real deal. I'm sorry. We don't talk. Does anyone ever reference hey, Sidney Crosby was the MVP of like, if you're going through his list of accolades, does anyone mention that he was the MVP of the 2016 World Cup of Hockey?
No,
Does
they won the
anyone
cup
talk
that year.
about it outside of the really cool Team North America sweaters? I'm not kidding. And maybe that unbelievable game against Sweden.
Yeah.
They don't.
Not really, no.
It didn't matter.
Yeah. But I think if you're going into a tournament thinking a year ahead, I think you got to pick the guys who you think give you the best chance to win in February.
I disagree.
Because you're projecting a year out, and are we certain that those guys, if they get these 3 games, because that's maximum 4, I guess is 4. Are these 4 games going to really fuel their development that much? I don't know. That's why when people go crazy about players who make the World Junior teams, like, oh, look at the guy made the World Juniors, he's an automatic going to be a star at the NHL. And I'm like, it's 7 games, and really 3 of them are against teams that are terrible. So it's really only 4 games.
But let me ask you, like, to frame it another way, because I tried this already. Let me just ask you again, just to make sure that we're not on the same page. Do you really want the first time that, let's just continue to use these 2 guys for an example, if they ultimately end up making it, do you really want the first time that Brock Faber and Jake Sanderson step onto that stage is in Italy?
I don't think it matters. Drew Doughty, look at him for Canada in 2010.
But it's different. We didn't have this in 2000. There wasn't a tournament in 2009 to prep for it. That's my point. To say that is fine. Can certain guy? I'm not saying they can handle it, but now that you have this at your disposal to throw them, why wouldn't you want to prep for it? Why would you throw it away? Like John Carlson, I just raved about him. And if you watched yesterday's Daily Faceoff Live, we just talked about how unbelievable he's been this season, playing 26-10 a night, almost a point per game. And this Caps team has defended like nobody's business this season. But John Carlson is 30. He will be 35 by the time 4 Nations starts, and he will be 36 by the time the Olympics start.
But if he continues to play at a high level, I don't care about his age.
Right. We're talking about one moment in time.
No. Now, if you're asking me, I'm taking Carlson.
Okay. Totally fair answer. I'm just asking. I'm asking how much, if you're the manager, are you thinking 2 and 3 steps ahead as opposed to just 1 in a vacuum? That's my only question.
No, I think it's a valid question, right? And the great part is, if you ask Bill that question, he'd give you a pretty honest answer.
But what I think is a little different is Canada's approaching this a little bit differently. Don Sweeney is the GM of the 4 Nations team, but he's not the GM of the Olympic team.
Yeah.
They've kind of have a separation of powers here. Not to say that Doug Armstrong, as the overseer of all of it, isn't involved intimately in every part of it. Of course he is, but they're just doing it a little bit differently. And I wonder if part of the reason why is not just to get more people involved and to give people more experience at the international level, but also for the exact reason we're talking about.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? Like Don's picking his team. If somebody doesn't make that team, they can. And I don't know, like, I get the players, you want to make the team and you'll be disappointed. But if you didn't make the team 1 year, and then the next year you're having a better season and you get picked, would you be like, oh, wow, I'm not going to play well? Like, I don't know. I would like to think that they're bigger than that. Maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe some guys' egos gets too big and they can't handle it. So, for some guys, maybe it's the first time they get cut from a team too, right? So even at 35, Frank, first time could be memorable. But I look at, those 2 teams have, like, even Canada's defense is interesting to me when I think the top 2 lefties and righties are pretty much set. But then after that, it's a battle on who's going to make that team.
It's going to be fascinating. We are going to have our 4 projected rosters on dailyfaceoff.com on Friday. I'm picking Team USA. Matt Larkin's got Canada. Uffe Boden in Sweden. He's got Team Sweden. And who else but Stephen Ellis to do Finland. So look for that.
All right. Well, looking for. Oh, I'm curious, how much it changes. Obviously, injuries are the major caveat that could happen, and you hope none happen to those guys. But sadly, there'll probably be 1 or 2 potentially. And there's going to be some guys here. Like I'm not a big believer, Frank, that if some guy has a great great November, that's going to change it. Like I would think you have a pretty good outline today of what you have from guys, and that, November, maybe, you're 13th or 14th, maybe, but for the most part, you think a guy's going to play his way onto the team in November?
Well, I think it all comes down to elements, right? Like, are you trying to build the best collection of players, or are you trying to build a team with different roles that do different things?
Yeah, I agree.
So like you just mentioned the penalty killing aspect. That's just one part of it. But like Adam Lowry has a totally different game than a lot of other players would.
Oh, yes.
And sounds funny to say, but Stefan Nason, he's got a totally different skill set. And like, how deep are you reaching into the well to make decisions? Or are you just saying, you know what? I don't care if those guys do it differently. Vincent Trocheck, he's versatile enough for me. I'm going with him. Guy that gets you 75 points.
Stefan Noesen to do a history lesson, that would be a Rob Zamner like pick. Don't do it.
Okay.
I no offense to Stefan Noesen, but come on. He's not one of the best 12 or 13 US forwards in the NHL.
But that's not my point. I know that he isn't, which is why I prefaced it that way.
I know.
Do you want a different element? And by the way, he has 12 points in 13 games so far this season.
Yeah, I understand, Frank. It would be Rob Zamner 2025. Just mark my words. That's what it would be. And if the young kids don't know who Rob Zamner is, and I hate, hey, Rob, great guy, but just
Rob
look
Zamner out here just catching strays from Gregor on a Thursday.
But he would be the first guy to admit it. Like, come on, shouldn't be on the team. Is
Rob Zamner the reason why Canada lost in the Olympics in Nagano?
No.
Okay.
Dominic Hasek was unbelievable, and if you want to talk about
not making Wayne Gretzky the captain was the first mistake.
Yeah, not putting him in the shootout.
Not using him in the shootout.
Oh, I still can't believe that. People are like, yeah, but Gretzky wasn't good. I'm like, he's the all-time greatest goal scorer in history to that point, up until Ovi's going to pass him at some point this season or maybe next. And you're telling me I'm putting him in. You put a defenseman. Ray Bourque was like, what the hell am I doing in here? So come on. It's terrible.
Now let's go to a guy that was barely alive for the 98 Olympics in Nagano.
Ty Yaremchuk. Ty, how you doing?
I'm doing good. That is correct. I would have been like 4 months old at that point. I'm back with another edition of Fill in the Blank, brought to you by our friends at Bet365, the largest sports betting platform globally. You can download the app today and use the promo code NATION to get in on a huge range of markets. That's NATION, promo code NATION. All right, let's jump right into things. It's Fill in the Blank. And for the first one, it's just simple. I want you to finish this sentence with a one-word answer. They were booed off the ice yesterday, so I'll give you the Detroit Red Wings start to the season has been blank, Frank.
Not unexpected. That's 2 words.
Yeah.
But I didn't think the Detroit Red Wings were a very good team to enter the year, so I'm not entirely shocked at where they are.
Well, you didn't steal it because I'll play by the rules. My word was expected.
Well, that would have been a more precise English way to say it. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Like, honestly, this is it's kind of the team I thought they would be. Like, I just look at their blue line, and I don't think it's good enough.
So based on those answers, neither of you giving them much of a hope of turning it around and being a playoff team, especially considering how tough the East is.
Yeah, they're gonna have a hard time, man. Ottawa looks like a lot better. Buffalo, after a slow start, is starting to find their way. Tage Thompson's really heating up. But then, like, look at the other side, right? So because that just gets you 4th. And then maybe, like, the Capitals, I thought were legit. I had them as a playoff team, right? The Rangers, Devils, Hurricanes, I think most people have them. So there's 4 right away. So, yeah, I think Detroit's going to be in they would have to pass both Buffalo and Ottawa and hold off Boston to make it. I don't think it's happening.
So just go back to this. Go to dailyfaceoff.com and click on their line combinations and scroll down to their defense pairings. They have one really good pair Simon Edvinsson and Mo Seider.
Yeah.
The remaining 4 defensemen are Ben Sherratt, Jeff Petrie, Albert Johansson, and Justin Hall. And they just traded Oli Mata.
Yeah.
Does that sound like an NHL Stanley Cup playoff caliber defense to you? Tyler's shaking his head no.
No. Yeah, that's fair.
On a complete random thought, I don't know if you guys, and Frank, you might not have seen it, but I think Ty would remember it. When I see Albert Johansson and I just see the name Albert and I see the Detroit Red jerseys, all I think about was that Canadian Tire commercial from many years ago. Albert. That's all I think about. God, it makes me laugh every time.
I don't know the reference.
All our Canadian listeners will know what I'm talking about.
All right. Our friends at Bet365.
By the way, before you do your thing, I just waiting for Wings fans to shit on me because I've been saying this for a couple years and they were like, are you watching Jake Wallman? Where have you been? Quit sleeping on Jake Wallman. Jake Wallman salary cap dump this past summer. Sorry, just had to get that in there.
Yeah, but they could use him right now, just saying. I still never understood that trade.
All right. The Red Wings right now, plus 190 to make the playoffs on Bet365. That's implied odds of just under 35%. Another team, well, I was surprised to see their playoff odds, so I'm interested to throw this one your way. There's a blank % chance that the Boston Bruins make the playoffs this year. Again, I'll give you what the odds boards are saying, but Gregor, what do you think with the Bruins and their playoff chances as they kind of sputter along here?
Well, I had them just because I don't like at some point, and Frank was the one who put the bug in me. He goes, when everybody always kind of goes with the same stuff for predictions. I was like, yeah, you know what? You're right. So I'm like, I actually didn't have Boston as a playoff team on our daily face-off prediction board. I had them 6th in a tough Atlantic. And I don't know why. There were so many things going on that sometimes it's tough to get back on track. And so I could see them missing the playoffs by 1 point. They're not a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. Heck, they might have 93, 94 points and miss the playoffs. So their odds they're not terrible. Like if they made the playoffs, I still wouldn't be surprised, right? It's super early in the season and they got a lot of good players, but sometimes it's hard to explain how a team goes. And I don't know why. I just had that gut feeling about Boston. So I'd still give them a decent chance. I'll say they got probably a 25% chance.
25%?
Yeah, maybe. Well, if you look at the odds, if I think there's 4 teams who can compete for the one spot, I give them all 25.
I don't think that's how it works, but sure.
What's how I'm doing it?
I'm going to say 60. Let me throw this at you. So to this point in the season, as the Bruins have really struggled to score, Jay, can you guess they're 22nd in the league in goals? Can you guess for me how many goals at even strength their top 3 lines combined have scored this season?
Ooh, I think is it not 6?
It's 4.
Okay.
Ooh. What are the odds that their top 3 lines
Yes.
at even strength continue to score at 4 goals in 9-game pace?
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Okay. And what are the odds that this defense core that is really good doesn't look good? And what are the odds that Jeremy Swayman just kind of hovers at 900?
You know, it's interesting. Kevin Woodley was the one who pointed out. He said, everybody says the environment for goaltender in Boston last year was great. He says, Allmark and Swayman actually faced a lot of really quality chances.
Yes, they did.
And so
but I think their defense is better this year than it was last year.
Yeah, but they're still giving up a lot of quality chances.
Okay. But they're also just really unlucky. So, and through all of that, the Boston Bruins are 2 wins away from being in 2nd place in the division.
Yeah.
I think it's way too early.
Yeah.
Insanely early.
All right, next one I got for you guys. The franchise valuations came out the other day. Frank, you wrote a really good story about it over at Daily Faceoff that people can go check out. But I got an interesting idea popped into my head when I read your part about the Tampa Bay Lightning and how they went from, they were purchased for 110 million or whatever it was to being worth 1.8 billion. I was like, man, if you could have seen that coming and somehow bought shares in the Tampa Bay Lightning, you'd be rich. So my question to you guys, and I hope this makes sense, is right now in the bottom half of those franchise valuations, and I'll rattle off a few of them. It's like Dallas, Mini, Calgary, Colorado, Pittsburgh, Seattle, San Jose, Nashville, St. Louis, Carolina, Florida, Anaheim, Utah, Ottawa, Buffalo, Winnipeg, and Columbus. If you could buy shares in one of those teams thinking they are going to do kind of what Tampa Bay has done and rocket their way up there in terms of franchise valuations, the team you'd buy shares in right now is blank, Frank.
Man, that's a really hard question.
It factors in a lot of different things, right? It's like, okay, off ice, on ice, like there's a lot to it.
Bottom half is what we're calling it.
Yeah, the 16 to 32. Like you can't sit there and be like, I'm going to buy shares in Montreal.
Yeah, it's not Dallas because I think they have to work too hard to make a buck in that market. It's not Pittsburgh because they're going the other direction on the ice. I think Seattle is going to be crazy tapped out when they add an NBA team. Nashville might have some tough days ahead, like 4 or 5 years from now, although that market is growing like mad. I think the play is probably Florida. I'll give you some options. My choices would be Ottawa, Utah, Florida, or Colorado. Because Ottawa getting the new building should vastly increase their value, but Ottawa still itself as a whole is not a huge market, and they don't have a ton of revenue that comes in from outside streams because government organizations can't buy suites. Their biggest corporate base is the government in that market, and that's not what they're spending money on. So I'll probably lean towards, I think Minnesota is probably a decent bet too, because hockey's always going to be important there, but Florida has the most room to grow. $1.25 billion. Vinny Viola bought the team for $250 million 11 years ago. So undeniably unbelievable investment.
Yeah, Florida was my first choice. I have Ottawa second. You're right, not an overly big market. You get a new arena in an infinitely better place, and with an owner who's got deep pockets. Look, you talk about Tampa Bay. Go look at Edmonton's evaluation and they're not a very big market. And now I know they have McDavid, so that probably helps. But I think Ottawa's a team on the rise. They got a lot of good young players, so I would go Florida first, Ottawa second.
The one thing about Edmonton is they really are not bashful in charging their fans. They have some of the highest ticket prices in the league. I don't need to tell you guys. There's no other game in town. There's no other competition, and Edmonton it's surprisingly a big market relative to some others. There's a million people in Edmonton, and people don't realize that.
Yeah.
All right.
It's expensive, buddy. I can tell you.
Yeah. That is a wrap on this week's edition of Fill in the Blank, brought to you by Bet365.
Frankie, before we sign off, I want to touch on the gold helmet and a story you got about Bill Zito and the Panthers in Finland.
Yeah, pretty awesome to see. Global Series is Saturday and Sunday, or Friday and Saturday in Tampere, Finland, the hometown of Alexander Barkov. Pretty awesome to see at their practice today that Sam Reinhart, their leading scorer, is skating around in the gold helmet. The traditional Finnish leading scorer of the team in each game wears the gold helmet, which is, I think, such a cool touch. They do that in some other leagues as well. But really cool to see that. And look, Barkov is rightfully and Miro Heiskanen, they're going to get tons of attention this weekend with the Global Series in Finland. But wanted to just tell a different story today on Daily Faceoff about the path and origin story of Panthers GM Bill Zito, Milwaukee native, who oddly enough, after playing at Yale, got a cup of coffee in a third division Finland league as a player, and then came back as an agent, partnered with Marcus Lato in forming Acme World Sports, and actually had an apartment and spent a bit of time living in Helsinki from like 1995 to into the 2000s. And it's an interesting path that he took to ultimately end up becoming an NHL GM. Not often that you hear of an American going to live in Helsinki to immerse himself in hockey culture. And so just a little bit of a different tale.
Look forward to that. Should be good. Frankie, have yourself a great weekend. we will chat with you on Monday. That's the rundown, episode 332, brought to you by Fountain Tire. Go to fountaintire.com, get your tires changed, get your vehicle fixed. They do it all, fountaintire.com.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.